It was a Saturday afternoon, and I was finally getting around to cleaning out my car. It had been a few weeks since I last took the time to organize the clutter that had accumulated. Fast food bags, coffee cups, old receipts, and it was starting to feel like a mess I couldn't ignore any longer. As I moved the seats forward to reach under them, something caught my eye. A faded receipt, crumpled and covered in coffee stains, wedged between the cracks of the seat. I didn't recognize it at first. The date on the front said Riverside Cafe from about 4 months ago, but the location didn't ring any bells. I hadn't been to any Riverside Cafe, at least not that I could remember. What really caught my attention, however, was the handwriting on the back. Neat and deliberate, it read, "Come back when you're ready to change." I stared at the words for what felt like forever, trying to make sense of them. A strange feeling settled in my chest, almost like a mix of confusion and anticipation. I wasn't sure what to think. Ready to change? What did that even mean? It felt like a cryptic message, meant for someone else but somehow landing in my hands. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it was just some odd coincidence. I turned the receipt over and over in my hands, my mind racing with thoughts that didn't seem to settle. But no matter how many times I read those words, they kept echoing in my head. I couldn't ignore the feeling that this was more than just a random slip of paper. I put the receipt in my pocket, thinking I'd deal with it later. But I couldn't shake the strange sense of urgency that had taken root. After a few minutes, I found myself sitting in the driver's seat, staring at the steering wheel. What was I supposed to do with this? Why was I so drawn to it? Part of me felt like I should just throw it away and forget about it, but the other part, the curious part, was telling me to follow through. Maybe it was just some weird sign, but I felt this pull to act on it. I needed to see this place for myself. I didn't know why, but something told me it might be the start of something important. So I grabbed my keys and started the car, driving toward the Riverside Cafe, not knowing what I would find, but somehow certain that I had to go. It wasn't far, just a 20-minute drive to a quiet part of town, not too far from the river. I wasn't sure what I expected, but when I pulled up outside the cafe, I was struck by how it looked. The building was old, made of brick with ivy creeping up the sides, and the sign was simple, nothing flashy. Inside, the cafe felt warm and welcoming. There were mismatched chairs, a mix of wooden tables and couches, and the smell of coffee and pastries filled the air. It was cozy, lived in, the kind of place people came to relax, maybe to think, maybe to escape for a little while. It felt familiar, even though I had never been there before. Something inside told me that I had found exactly what I was looking for. I stepped inside, and the warmth of the cafe wrapped around me like a cozy blanket. It wasn't the trendy kind of place I'd normally visit. No polished marble counters or neon signs, just a small, unassuming space that felt like it had been here for decades, quietly waiting for people to wander in. The soft hum of conversations and the gentle clinking of mugs created a peaceful, almost timeless atmosphere. The air was rich with the smell of freshly brewed coffee and warm pastries. There was a chalkboard menu on the wall, its handwritten items inviting and simple, nothing too flashy or complicated. It wasn't the kind of cafe I usually frequented, but there was something about it that felt oddly comforting. I stood at the counter for a moment, just taking it all in. Behind the espresso machine, a woman in her early 50s looked up at me. Her hair was streaked with silver, pulled back in a loose bun, and she wore wire-rimmed glasses perched on her nose. She had a calm, welcoming expression, but there was something about her eyes, a knowing, like she could see right through me. She gave me a small smile, one that seemed to carry more weight than most. "I've been waiting for you," she said, her voice smooth and warm, as if she'd said the words many times before. I blinked, caught off guard by her statement. "Excuse me?" I asked, unsure if I had heard her correctly. "You're here for the coffee, I assume?" she replied, her smile widening just slightly, as if she already knew what I needed. I held up the crumpled receipt, still in my hand. I found this. It says, "Come back when you're ready to change." But I don't even know how it ended up in my car. I felt a little foolish, holding up the receipt like some sort of mystery, but the words had been haunting me ever since I found it. She took the receipt from my hand and looked at it with a thoughtful nod. "Ah, yes," I wrote that, she said, handing it back to me. I wrote it months ago, but I had no idea it would find its way to you. Why me? I asked, feeling both confused and intrigued. How could she know that it was me? How could this be all part of some larger plan? You're ready, she said simply, her voice calm but with an air of certainty. At least you're here now, aren't you? I didn't know what to say to that. How could she possibly know what I was ready for? But somehow, standing there in the cozy corner of the cafe, I felt like something inside me was waking up, something that had been dormant for a long time. My name's Emma, she added, extending her hand. What can I get you? I hesitated for a moment, still processing everything. Just black coffee, please, I said, realizing I was starting to feel more like myself again, even in this strange, unfamiliar place. Coming right up, Emma said, and as she prepared my coffee, she gave me a small wink. Have a seat. We'll talk while I get your drink ready. I found a small table near the window and sat down, still trying to make sense of what was happening. My mind raced, and 1,000 questions swirled around. But in that moment, all I could do was sit there in the warmth of the cafe, trying to center myself. The hum of conversations and the soft clink of cups around me gave me a strange sense of peace. It felt like I had stepped out of the chaos of my life for just a moment and into a place that invited me to stop, breathe, and think. A few minutes later, Emma returned with my coffee, setting it gently on the table in front of me, along with a slice of banana bread. I hadn't ordered it, but the gesture felt right, like a small offering. On the house, she said with a knowing smile. You look like you could use something sweet. I nodded in thanks, though I was still trying to wrap my head around everything. I picked up the mug, savoring the rich, smooth taste of the coffee, and took a small bite of the banana bread. The warmth of the cafe, combined with the unexpected kindness from Emma, made me feel strangely grounded, like I had stumbled into a space where I could finally stop running. Emma sat across from me, her eyes steady, waiting. So, she began, breaking the silence in a gentle but direct way, what brings you here today? I opened my mouth to answer but stopped myself. What did bring me here? I hadn't expected to find myself in this cafe today, but now that I was here, I couldn't deny the pull I felt to stay. I found the receipt, I said slowly, still holding it in my hand. It's not like I had any real reason to come here. I mean, I don't even know how it got in my car, but I felt like I had to. Emma didn't look surprised. I see, she said simply, her voice calm. Sometimes we get caught up in life and forget what we really want. We lose sight of who we were or who we're meant to be. But the truth is, we're always changing. The question is, are we ready for it? Her words hit me harder than I expected. I had been drifting for the past few years, completely unaware of how far off course I had gone. At 32, I was stuck in a job I hated, doing something I had no passion for. I worked as a software engineer for a tech company that offered a nice paycheck, but no sense of fulfillment. It was the kind of job that paid the bills, but left me feeling hollow every single day. The truth was, I'd stopped asking myself what I actually wanted to do years ago. Somewhere along the way, I had convinced myself that stability was enough, that it was enough to just survive. I've been drifting, I admitted quietly, almost as if saying it out loud made it more real. I'm stuck in this routine. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. It's like I've been living in autopilot for a long time. Emma nodded, her expression kind but not pitying. It happens to a lot of people. The world makes it easy to forget your dreams when you're just trying to get by. But you're here now, aren't you? That's a step. A small one, but it's a start. I let her words sink in. The small action of coming here, of choosing to walk into this cafe, felt like something more significant than I had originally thought. Does it really matter? I asked, my voice tinged with skepticism. I mean, is it too late for me to change? I've been doing this job for years. Can I really just start over? Emma's smile was gentle but firm. It's never too late. Change doesn't happen all at once. It's small choices, over time, one step at a time, and sometimes just by showing up, you've already made the biggest decision. Her words felt like a lifeline thrown out to me in the middle of a storm I hadn't even known I was in. I'd been afraid of change, terrified of the unknown, so I had settled into this life I didn't want. But here, sitting across from this stranger who somehow saw me, I felt the tiniest spark of hope. Maybe it wasn't too late. Maybe I wasn't stuck forever. Maybe, for the first time in years, I could choose to change. I looked down at the receipt again, the message still clear in my mind. Come back when you're ready to change. I wasn't sure yet if I was ready, but maybe, just maybe, I had taken the first step by walking into this cafe. I left Riverside Cafe that afternoon, feeling both unsettled and strangely at peace. The quiet hum of the cafe still echoed in my mind, and Emma's words lingered like a quiet whisper in the back of my head. I didn't know what had brought me there, but I couldn't ignore the feeling that something had shifted. It wasn't a sudden, dramatic change. It was subtle, like the first crack of dawn before the sun rises fully. But it was something, and that was enough to keep me thinking about the cafe long after I left. Over the next few days, I found myself reflecting on what Emma had said, about being stuck, about losing sight of what I wanted, and about the possibility of change. I had spent years convincing myself that I had no choice but to continue on the path I was on. The steady job at the tech company, the routine that I had fallen into, somehow it felt safer to stay where I was, even if I was miserable. But now, I couldn't stop thinking about how I had once dreamed of doing something more meaningful. I had always loved writing, but I had buried that passion deep inside, telling myself it wasn't practical, that it wouldn't pay the bills. Writing had always been something I did in my free time. When I was young, it was my escape, my joy. But as I got older, I had pushed it aside. The job at the tech company became my priority, and my dream of being a writer became a distant memory, something I only thought about when I allowed myself to be lost in daydreams. By the time the weekend rolled around, I found myself heading back to Riverside Cafe. I wasn't sure why I was going, but I felt like I needed to. As I pulled into the parking lot, I had that same strange feeling I had the first time I came here, like I was meant to be here, even though I couldn't explain why. I walked inside, and Emma looked up from behind the counter, as if she'd been expecting me. She smiled warmly, and this time there was no surprise in her expression, just a knowing, like she could see right through me. "I knew you'd be back," she said, her voice calm and reassuring. I gave her a small smile, feeling a little embarrassed. I wasn't sure if I'd come back, honestly, but something about this place, it's like it's calling me. Emma's smile widened, and she nodded. Sometimes, we need to find the places that remind us of who we really are. That's what this place is for. I walked up to the counter, and without needing to ask, she made my usual black coffee, no sugar. "Sit down," she said. "Let's talk." I took my coffee and found a seat near the window, where the soft afternoon sunlight streamed in. As I sipped the coffee, I realized how much I had missed this feeling, how I had forgotten how much I loved sitting in a quiet place with a good cup of coffee, reflecting on life. It felt like I was reconnecting with a part of myself that I had lost. After a few minutes of silence, Emma joined me at the table. "Tell me," she said softly, "what are you really looking for?" Her question caught me off guard. I hadn't thought about it in those terms before. What was I looking for? The answer came to me almost instinctively. "I want to write," I said, my voice steady but full of realization. "I want to write real stories, not just code. I want to tell stories that matter." Emma nodded, her eyes lighting up. "Then start. Write. You don't need permission, and you don't need to wait for the perfect moment. Just begin." I felt a surge of something inside me, a combination of fear and excitement. "But it's not that simple," I said. "I can't just quit my job and start writing. I have bills to pay, responsibilities." Emma smiled gently, her voice calm. "It's not about quitting everything at once. It's about taking small steps. Write when you can. Write for yourself at first. The rest will follow." Her words resonated deeply. I had spent so much time convincing myself that I couldn't change, that it was too late, that the dream I had was something from the past. But maybe, just maybe, I could start now, one step at a time. As I left Riverside Cafe that day, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I wasn't sure where this new path would take me, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was heading in the right direction. The shift wasn't instant, but I was ready for it. I had started, and that was enough. The days following my visit to Riverside Cafe felt like a turning point, but they weren't as dramatic as I had imagined they'd be. I didn't wake up the next morning with a clear plan for my life. In fact, it felt more like I was gently moving in a new direction, inch by inch, without a map or any real certainty about where I was going. But every time I thought about writing, about making a change, there was this quiet sense of possibility that I hadn't felt in years. I started small. I dusted off an old journal I had tucked away on my bookshelf, the one I used to write in when I was younger. At first, the words felt clumsy, hesitant. It had been so long since I allowed myself to just write for the sake of writing, without worrying about deadlines, expectations, or whether it was good enough. But as I sat down each day, even just for 10 minutes, something shifted inside me. I realized I wasn't writing for anyone else, not even for approval or validation. I was writing for me, for the joy of telling a story, for the simple pleasure of stringing words together to create something meaningful. I still worked at the tech company, writing code that made my soul feel numb at times. But during lunch breaks or in the quiet moments of the evening, I wrote. Short stories, journal entries, anything that helped me reconnect with the person I used to be, the person who dreamed of writing for a living. I kept telling myself it didn't matter how small it was, how imperfect. It only mattered that I kept going. 3 weeks after that second visit to Riverside Cafe, I found myself sitting at my desk at home with a new idea forming in my mind. It wasn't anything earth-shattering, just a simple piece about a local coffee shop and its impact on the community, but it felt like a real story, one I could be proud of. I started typing, letting the words flow without worrying about structure or style. For the first time in months, I felt alive in a way I hadn't felt at work, or even in my daily life. This was the work I was meant to do. That evening, I took the piece to Riverside Cafe, just like the last time. Emma wasn't behind the counter when I arrived, so I found a seat by the window and pulled out my laptop. I was hesitant at first, unsure if I should share it with her yet, but there was something about the atmosphere of the cafe that made me want to. It felt like a safe space to take risks. When Emma finally came over, she greeted me with a warm smile. "How's the writing going?" she asked, taking a seat across from me without waiting for an answer. I slid the laptop in her direction. "I wrote something," I said, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. "I think it's the first piece I've written that actually feels like mine." Emma read it silently, her eyes scanning the words. I couldn't read her expression, and my anxiety rose as the minutes ticked by. Finally, she looked up at me with a smile that made my chest tighten. "This is good," she said simply. "It's not perfect, but it's real. You've captured something important here, and that's what matters. You're on the right track." Her words, simple as they were, meant more to me than any compliment I had received in years. It wasn't just about the validation. It was about knowing that I was doing something that mattered. It wasn't easy, but it felt right. "I don't know what comes next," I said, looking down at my laptop. "I don't even know if I should try to get this published. What if it's not enough? What if it's not good enough?" Emma's gaze softened. "It's good enough if it's real. If it's something that matters to you, then it will matter to someone else. Don't worry about perfection. Just keep writing. Just keep showing up." I sat there for a while, lost in the feeling of being seen, of being understood, and of realizing that I was no longer pretending to be someone I wasn't. The journey ahead would be uncertain, and the road would be long, but for the first time in a long time, I was ready to walk it. I didn't know where it would lead, but it didn't matter. I was finally taking the first real steps toward becoming who I was always meant to be. The following weeks were a blur of late nights and early mornings spent writing. I kept my tech job, but every free moment was devoted to writing, whether it was in the quiet hours of the morning before work or in the stillness of my apartment after a long day of coding. I found myself more awake, more present in my life than I had been in years. The words came slowly at first, and I spent hours revising and editing, questioning whether any of it was good enough. But there was a part of me that didn't care about perfection anymore. I was writing for the sheer joy of it, for the freedom of expression that I hadn't realized I'd been missing. I kept returning to Riverside Cafe, each time feeling more at home than the last. Emma was always there, offering her quiet encouragement and subtle wisdom. Every time we talked, I felt like I was getting closer to understanding something important about myself. The cafe became my sanctuary, a place where I could breathe and think. a place where I was allowed to just be. One day, about a month after I had started writing again, I found myself sitting at the same table by the window with a freshly brewed cup of coffee and a new draft on my laptop. I had been working on an article about a local nonprofit organization that provided job training for underserved communities. It wasn't the kind of story that would make headlines, but it felt important to me. It felt like it mattered. I had written several drafts, each one better than the last, but I still wasn't sure if it was ready to be shared. When Emma came by, she noticed the manuscript on my screen. "Another one?" she asked, her eyes glinting with curiosity. I nodded, feeling a bit self-conscious. "Yeah, I'm still working on it. I don't know if it's ready yet. I keep second-guessing myself." She sat down across from me and smiled, that same knowing smile she always had. "Why are you second-guessing yourself?" I hesitated, unsure of how to explain the doubt that had been gnawing at me. "I don't know. It just feels like I'm not there yet. Like this isn't it." "Let me ask you this," Emma said, her voice calm but direct. "Does it feel true? Does it feel like it matters to you?" I thought about it for a moment. The answer came to me instantly. Yes, it does. "Then that's all that matters," Emma said, leaning back in her chair. "You can't control how others will react to your work, but you can control whether it's true to you. And if it is, it will find its audience." Her words sank deep into me. It wasn't about being perfect or about having it all figured out. It was about staying true to what I cared about, what I wanted to say. It was about writing because it mattered to me, not because I needed external validation. That was the key. I looked at the article in front of me, feeling a new sense of clarity. I was ready to send it out. It wasn't perfect, and maybe it would never be, but it was mine. It was real. "I'm going to submit it," I said, more to myself than to Emma. "It's time." Emma smiled. "I'm proud of you," she said simply, but her words felt like a warm embrace. "You're doing it." That night, I submitted the article to a local magazine. I didn't know if they would accept it, but that wasn't the point anymore. I had written it with all the passion and honesty I had in me, and that felt like enough. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I wasn't sure what came next, but I knew one thing for certain. I was finally living the life I had always wanted to live. And it was just the beginning. The days after I submitted my article felt strange, like I was waiting for something, but I didn't know what. I had done it. I had written something real, something that mattered to me, and I had put it out into the world. But now, the waiting felt endless. The old habits crept in, the self-doubt, the second-guessing. What if they didn't like it? What if it wasn't good enough? I tried to push those thoughts aside, but they were hard to ignore. Despite the uncertainty, I kept writing. Every morning, I woke up early to write before work, and in the evenings, I found myself drafting new pieces, pouring my thoughts onto the page without worrying about what anyone else would think. There was a freedom in it, in just writing for the sake of writing. I still had my tech job, but it no longer felt like the center of my life. Writing had taken its place, and it felt like something I could finally hold on to. One afternoon, as I sat at Riverside Cafe with my laptop, I saw the email notification pop up on my screen. My heart skipped a beat. It was from the magazine I had submitted my article to. I opened it quickly, my hands shaking slightly. The email was brief, but the words were clear. "We'd love to publish your piece. We think it's a great fit for our upcoming issue. We'll be in touch soon regarding next steps." I sat back in my chair, a mix of disbelief and excitement flooding over me. My article was going to be published. I had done it. The thing I had been dreaming about for so long, the thing I had almost convinced myself was impossible, was finally happening. It felt surreal. I looked up to find Emma standing nearby, wiping down a counter. When she saw the look on my face, she raised an eyebrow. "What's going on?" she asked, walking over. I showed her the email. "They accepted it," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "They're going to publish it." Emma smiled, her eyes lighting up with pride. "I knew you could do it." I let out a laugh, a mix of relief and joy. I didn't know if I could, but I did. I really did it. Emma sat down across from me, and for a moment we both just sat there, the weight of the moment sinking in. It wasn't just about the article being published. It was about everything that had led up to this point, The quiet conversations, the small decisions, the late nights spent writing, the vulnerability of putting something personal out into the world. It was about the fact that I had chosen to take that first step, even when I wasn't sure of where it would lead. Feels good, doesn't it? Emma said after a while. I nodded, smiling. Yeah, it really does. I sat there for a while longer, just thinking about how far I had come. The journey wasn't over, not by a long shot. But in that moment, I realized that I was finally on the right path, the path I had always wanted to be on. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was living the life I was meant to live. Thank you, I said to Emma, my voice full of gratitude, for everything, for helping me find my way back. She smiled, her expression soft but knowing. You did it yourself. I just helped you see it. I couldn't help but laugh again. She was right. I had done the work, but her quiet encouragement had been the spark I needed to believe in myself. Without Riverside Cafe, without Emma, I wasn't sure I would have taken that first step, but I had, and now there was no turning back. As I left the cafe that day, the excitement of my first published article still buzzing in my chest, I knew that this was just the beginning. There was so much more to write, so much more to say. And I was ready for whatever came next. The next few weeks passed in a blur. My article was published, and seeing my name in print for the first time was an experience I couldn't quite put into words. It wasn't about the recognition or the validation. It was about the feeling that I had finally taken control of my own narrative, that I was doing what I had always wanted to do, despite the doubts and obstacles I'd faced. The response to the article was better than I expected. People actually read it. They commented, they shared it, and some even reached out to me, thanking me for telling a story that mattered to them. I remember one email from a woman who worked for a similar nonprofit organization. She told me that my article had inspired her to push for more visibility for the work her team was doing in the community. That, more than anything, made me feel like the journey I had started was worth it. But even with all the positive feedback, the lingering questions remained. What next? Was this just a one-time thing? Was I really capable of writing more? Was I really going to make it as a writer? Or would I go back to just writing code and living my life in autopilot again? I didn't have the answers, but I knew one thing. I couldn't go back to the way things were. I had tasted what it felt like to do meaningful work, to write something that made a difference. And I didn't want to give that up. So I kept writing. Every day I found time to write, whether it was an article, an essay, or a short story. I wrote when I was exhausted. I wrote when I didn't feel inspired. And sometimes I wrote just to clear my mind, even if the words didn't seem to flow. It became my anchor, my daily ritual, a part of me I couldn't imagine living without. One day, about a month after my first article was published, I sat at Riverside Cafe again, laptop open, sipping on my usual black coffee. It was a slow afternoon, and I was trying to focus on a new project I had started, a piece about a local artist who had recently started an art therapy program. But I found myself staring out the window instead, lost in thought. Emma came over with a fresh cup of coffee, placing it gently in front of me. "How's it going?" she asked, her eyes curious but patient, as always. I hesitated. "It's going well, but I'm still not sure where this is headed. I mean, I've written more pieces, and they're getting some attention, but I can't help but feel like I'm not really there yet, like I'm still trying to prove I belong in this world." She sat down across from me, her expression thoughtful. "That's normal," she said quietly. "The doubt never fully goes away. But here's the thing. You're already there. You've already taken the hardest step. You've started. And every word you write, every article you publish, you're building your way forward. No one starts out perfect. It's the work that matters." Her words hit me harder than I expected. "I know," I said, staring at the coffee in front of me, "but I still feel like an imposter sometimes, like I'm not really cut out for this." Emma chuckled softly. "Everyone feels that way. Even the most successful writers, the ones you admire. The imposter syndrome never really goes away, but you don't have to prove anything to anyone. Just keep writing, keep doing the work that speaks to you, and the rest will follow." I nodded, feeling a sense of peace settle over me. It was exactly what I needed to hear. The doubts would always be there, but they didn't have to control me. I had already taken the first step, and I was on my way. Maybe the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but I was ready to face it. I closed my laptop and took a deep breath, feeling more confident than I had in a long time. I didn't have all the answers yet, but I didn't need them. I was finally living the life I had always wanted, and that was enough for now. As I left Riverside Cafe that day, I realized that Emma was right. The work wasn't about being perfect. It was about showing up, doing the work, and staying true to myself. I didn't know what would come next, but I was no longer afraid to find out. The journey had only just begun. Life is full of moments where we feel lost or uncertain, but the key is to take small steps forward, even when the path is unclear. Don't wait for the perfect moment to start, just begin. Follow what truly matters to you, even if it feels risky or uncomfortable. Doubt will always be present, but don't let it stop you from pursuing what brings you joy and purpose. Trust yourself, show up, and keep doing the work, one step at a time. Remember, it's the journey of growth and learning that ultimately shapes who you are meant to be.